I know teachers right now are into their 40s who are still paying college loans off.
The people that aren't in education complain about what we're not doing in education. You're like, all right, so the people that are doing cool stuff, you almost have borderline a moral obligation to say, all right, this is what I'm doing then.
Let me ask you a very quick question. Is it easier to get a passport than it is to substitute teach?
Yep. Like, be lazy. Well, if I'm training people to be teachers, be lazy. Yeah, shut up and let them do it.
There's two emotions that I straddle, right? Is hope and worry. So I'm worried to death about kids, but I'm super hopeful about the future.
Education wants the instant gratification. They want the weeds. They don't want the trees.
CTE is coming gangbusters for the traditional, practitioners who don't want to even entertain moving things around for the sake of efficacy.
Do we need as much time as we need to do school?
I mean, if you're asking a 14-year-old, they're going to tell you a weekend will be fine. But no, I want to challenge kids.
If you're about to listen to this podcast, buckle up.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Peter Hostrawser here along with Alli Dahl, depending on if you're seeing which screen, wherever you are. I might be pointing at you. I might be pointing outside. Who knows? That's the beauty of Zoom sometimes when you don't know where everybody's at. So, Alli, wow, what a wonderful, wonderful guest, Dr. Gary Skeen, sorry. How is this different?
How is this different is the question, right? I mean, I was thinking about that when you started the podcast and whatnot, and just to be like, I want to change education. I want it to be different. I think so many people desire change, and then you don't necessarily have a framework or a way to kind of do the changes. You have all these ideas. So what was cool about last week's episode with Gary and Virginia, it might as well be the state
Right.
of Virginia. It feels like the whole state, but it's growing, but is that they have a way, a hub, a network in order to answer those questions and make those changes.
Right.
On a much bigger scale than an individual. As a podcast, we can only reach those who listen or people who share out the podcast. So thank you for all of you who listen and for who share. And the reach is really, through that, and then people who find us from socials and whatnot. But to have a state, that's unifying. I won't say they're unified, but they are unifying around public education and rallying to really change is amazing. We haven't talked to anybody like that on the podcast yet that I know of.
Yeah. One of the key components that Gary was talking about was the state of Virginia, their education area is giving them the leeway. And that's huge. I think that's very huge. That's a huge blocker, and I know the 49 other states mostly. And I'm sure it was a blocker in Virginia as well. But to give the leeway to try things is I believe one of the foundational steps that a state can do to really help individual communities break out of an outdated system that people are trying to challenge, but their hands are tied because of legalities, etc. And I was super excited to hear him say that, because if we have other listeners that are in legislative areas around education or go to their state capitals or talk to their state board of educations and all these people, superintendents, etc., this needs to be a core conversation. I won't say argument, but a conversation that if we are going to move, if your state is going to move forward in creating systems that can change and be flexible and adaptable and create change agents, flexible learners and adaptable learners, you are going to have to give your educational institutions flexibility and adaptability to do that work. And I think that to me was one of the biggest things that, like you said before, was brought us to Gary and his team was let's just stop tweaking and let's do something different. And I really that was one of the main things that I was like, yes, now let's
Yes,
scale this
absolutely.
across. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you didn't catch last week's episode, I'll say this again. Um, Gary came to us,
Yeah.
right? Like cannot possibly know all of the amazing things that are happening in education. And we want to put on a megaphone all the great things that are happening in education and ways to disrupt education because there's plenty of news and media out there that's talking about all the bad things in education and what we can't do in education and all the misses and the failures, right? And so to shine light and bring voice to
Mhm.
organizations and networks and teams and schools and anybody doing anything innovative in education is what we love to have on the podcast.
Yeah.
And like we want to uplift communities, especially because when we did our summer series, we talked to all these young people, and like what we heard was that many of them felt like they struggled and are struggling to find spaces that align with who they are, who they want to be, and they don't necessarily know where to look.
Hmm.
And the more integrated education is and can really be a central hub to then go out and reach the local communities, you'll have less people, I believe you'll have less people feeling like that.
Hmm.
And there's just, you know, Gary was a band director, and we talked about how like you and I both had this thought of like how band directors are really unifiers for the community, and they're
Yeah.
these leaders. They can turn into great leaders because I can think of going to high school football games in my local community before I was even in high school. And the sound that you hear that gets everybody cheering and everybody unified is the band.
Hmm.
And it's like we can come together for this sporting event and then people like disperse and after the Friday night lights and everything. But like how do we create more of those types of community events, community hubs where people feel like this is a safe place I can go, I can rally behind my community, I can make change in my community and all of those things. And that's really such an opportunity for education and the alignment between K through 12, post-secondary workforce, the State Department, and like policy legislation, getting all those people involved, including the students, to really make those changes. It's exciting to know it's out there and that it is happening and that there's probably more people doing this work. So if you know anybody, let us know, reach
Hmm.
out to us too, because we want to share those stories.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really liked how you kind of highlighted the somebody at a state level like like Gary is like putting this together and with this team and there is major change. Um, Explosive change, I think is like boom. But I really I think there sometimes it just baffles me. I think in education and traditionalists and education of what are we doing here? Why don't we just stop tweaking little pieces and no, let's overhaul this and let's actually do this. And I think with the energy that Gary brought, like those are the people that you really want to be around. You definitely want to check out the organization and go back and kind of grab those connects. I do want to like highlight a couple of things, like $1.2 billion. Now, this isn't all about dollars and cents, but $1.2 billion that you are actually working with, in and around when you're creating these pipelines and such. And the one thing that really struck me, because we work with youth a lot, is again, and you hear it over and over again. And every one of our young people who were on the podcast and the series before, like, well, the summer series where they were talking about things, were the experiences. And I didn't know, or I did know that what this was like because of experiences. And Gary spoke of the two young people who were in healthcare and did the C-section, and they were there, and one said, "Yeah, this is cool," and the other one said, "No, this is not." There's at least an $100,000 worth of savings that happened at that moment, that that family will be able to now adjust and get a education in an area that is not going to be wasted if we continue that, right? Like, and so what does that do for the family? Number one, your return on investment is ginormous, right? Because now you have clarity. And number two, like, you're now that family, if you have clarity, the pipeline, wherever that student goes, let's just say they go in aerospace, right? It's the other coast, and they go deep into that, and then they get their gig, and they love being in engineering or whatever. That is going to be return on investment. And you're also now building more wealth for that family. And guess what? What do people do with wealth, Allie? Like, they actually spend money in, usually like local area stuff. And so the state of Virginia's economy will
Yep.
continue to grow at a faster rate. This is common sense, right? If we don't do it this way, we're probably going to put a lot more people in, I'll just use the middle class argument, but a lot more people will be busted right out of the middle class and move down because they can't afford the post-secondary education routes that
Mhm.
are also changing here, which I love, like ODU, and there were a couple other, and we didn't even get into, those areas of change. There is so much like common sense to this, but it takes a lot of effort, a lot of failing, and a lot of people to believe to get them all at the table. And Gary really outlined how they did that. And that, to me, again, it goes back to that foundation. However, like, you make that connection with people, you can save, I mean, dare I say, save lives. You can save so much time, effort, money, and keep people in the game of learning
Mhm.
longer. So this is
Yes.
real life, lifelong learning. And that's, I just get so passionate about this because all the way back to those first episodes we did with, I mean, we'll go back to Derek Griffin, right? He just basically said, you gotta get out there and experience things. And if you can't, and you're locked in a classroom or classrooms all day, you don't have that exposure.
Nope.
Gary's like,
Nope.
we're not tweaking, man, we're rebuilding. And I
We're-
just, yeah. So I'm ecstatic. I'm just like, my
I know.
brain is like exploding right now.
I want to give you made me think of a really cool example in my own life that happened probably 10 years ago. And it's an example that's I would never have thought of it if you hadn't brought up this idea of like saving people time and money with
Mhm.
going and witnessing a C-section. So I was at the bank, and waiting for a banker. I think I was opening an account or moving or whatever. So I was just chatting with the banker. She's typing away whatever she has to do, and I'm like, how did you get into banking? And she's like, well, actually, I was in EMT school, and like, I think she even graduated from it. And it wasn't until, she had gone through, I don't know how long and how much she invested time, resources, energy, and she's like, I realized I wasn't emotionally prepared for this job. And the way she put it, I'll never forget. She said, somebody's worst day can't be my everyday.
Ooh.
And I was like, wow, wow. And she's like, I can do banking all day. I can deal with the numbers, but seeing people's worst day and to be on the forefront of that. But then there are people that they can handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
she just, I don't remember the why she wanted to go into it, but she said she had never even thought about being a banker. I remember her saying that. But like exposure, we talk about like people having these experiences because of how much time and energy could she have saved had she known that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you do have to experience stuff to realize that, and it's not like it's a failure or it totally derailed her life. But and she probably got a lot of life lessons out of it and to then find her way into banking. But like could we have given her that experience in an internship or a field experience so then she didn't do the full program, because that spot then could have been for someone else. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many like butterfly effects you can put to this.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to create tsunamis across the other side of the world here, but uh I just think it's interesting that there's nothing wrong in experiencing something and realizing that it's not for you.
Yeah.
There no shame. And I think that was something that we heard from our young people is they felt like shame. Maybe they didn't word it that way, but like of picking wrong or disappointing others. I know I felt that in my life when my parents expected something of me and then I realized that's not for me. And
Right.
it's part of growing up and becoming your own person. I just think though that not everybody has a really strong support network or they don't have a ton of resources at their disposal to maybe get the experiences that schools could provide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what excites me about this type of work is that kids can in public education, this is public education for free, get these experiences in needed workforce areas. They can get exposed to these fields, they can get experience, they can talk to experts, and they can know is if this is an area that I want to explore in well before they have to commit money to it, and then like a lot more time and resources. We could just accelerate the process of workforce talent pipeline development. That's what I heard from Gary.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, that's to me, it's very intentional. It is a mindset shift. It is not like, okay, you can get like your diploma and then you got to go figure it out and that was costing. I mean, that's just not economically viable anymore. And and now actually to get like diplomas in a traditional system, I mean, people are just start utilizing AI to check boxes and those easy systemic things. And we kind of talked about this at the end of the last kind of the summer series where yeah, it's the communication, it's the teamwork, it's all these different things that you can see. And then on top of that, like you said, I don't want to be there for somebody's worst day, every day. I get that. Like there's so many people like I know when going through my experience of an educator, my grandfather was a veterinarian, right? And you know, a lot of people, oh, I would love to be a veterinarian. I'm like, so why? You know, and it's because I just love animals. And again, I'm like, you're going to see animals in the worst way. You'll do the checkup things. That's great. I mean, maybe you want to create a checkup clinic or something like that. But like, when it goes down, like it goes down, and you're gonna have to deal with injured animals. You're gonna have to deal with putting down. It was my grandfather always told me is the hardest thing to do was to be that person who has to euthanize
Yeah.
an animal in front of its owners and such, and it's just a part of the job. But many people don't know that. right? So, okay, that was an extreme example, but think about like 5 or 6 of those, 7 of those experiences as people start to understand what they don't want to do and or maybe what they want to do, and then they still can tweak. Like there's still minor shifts in there. And again, this kind of all comes back to number one, learning. You're supposed to do that. Gary said it. There's failures that happen in here. We look at our failures and try to figure out how to adjust them because they're the opportunities to grow, and we celebrate our successes. I mean, that's life, and that's the mindset shift and being very intentional. I mean, they have 193 partners right now. I'm guessing in a couple of years they'll have 400 partners, right? I mean, I know like in our program where I work, we were at 90 students going into this school year. We're looking at 200 into next year. We
Wow.
know it's going to grow. There's so much opportunity here, but man, when you're doing the right thing, when you have what he said, a mighty team, which I like that. I think a mighty mouse, but like everybody, mighty is such a great word. I don't hear that often anymore. But it's real time alignment for each and every person as much as possible. And to me, that is the key to disrupting education. So many. I keep going back, Alec, because let it out of the bag. I'm working on a book here, but like one of my early episodes with the students, that's really, man, they all wanted experiences. They always wanted to hands-on something. They all wanted exposure. I didn't know what this looked like. The school didn't know me. I felt like a number, blah, blah, blah. And again, this was, again, mind you, 10 years ago, pre-COVID, and where we have learned. But I just think, how is this all different? And we'll just come back to that statement. And to me, that's where we really start to take a look at how is this different? How is this better for everyone involved? And man, it goes back to the students, in my experiences, the students who struggle with school, either academically, behaviorally, blah, blah, blah. And yes, there's all this stuff that happens outside of school, right?
Mm.
Um, every one of those challenges are opportunities to learn from that person, whether it's an educator, an administrator, a community member, or even a student, and figure out, okay, why do you do this way, and how can we help you like get to where you want to go? That's it. How is this different? I love how Gary put that together. So,
It's a great framework. And I'm sure there's like more pieces to
oh yeah,
their design thinking framework, but it's like such a great opener to
yeah,
just kind of get everybody on the same page.
yeah,
Of like, if we're really going to make this change, it needs to be different, and you need to be able to articulate how is this different. Like, that's just a great top of mind piece
hmm
when you are trying to create change. The other piece that I was excited about that I'm sure we could dive in more with Gary is they were also considering, and we don't hear this a lot, how to reimagine the teacher preparation
yep,
model, because you can literally can't forget about them. And we know that schools are desperate for educators, and like the numbers grow so much every year. It was so interesting, like when I would sub, um a lot of the schools would be like, well, are you trying to get, a job? Are you trying to teach full time? And it wasn't like, like I remember like back when I started, that would be like, oh, well, we don't have space. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
we don't need
yeah,
space. And now the question is coming from like, we know you're qualified. And if you do want a job, we would hire you.
hmm
And so kind of creating it's workforce development, but it's in also the area that you recognize the value of your educators and how they need to have a a role in this too, and you have to recruit them.
yeah,
And you can, I think that's a huge missed opportunity right now, because a lot of people put teachers down or like the work down. just like even in the system. Like I've heard countless teachers say, I would never advise my own kids to go into education now, which is sad. I would, like I think it's a great time to be an educator, because most places, or rather you can find a place that wants to innovate, wants to do like great things. Move to Virginia, apparently. Okay.
Right.
Georgia too. Jason Van Nuss got some great programs. I mean, North Carolina with Dan Gonzalez, Christy Valesky, she's all over the Midwest in the work that she's partnering with schools. And there are opportunities in education, but to hear that was really exciting, because we do need to reimagine teacher preparation. And like also, if you're going to innovate and throw out an old model, your teachers have to be on board, and they have to be very vocally on board, and like really truly like excited about the change, because they could be your biggest advocates, and they could be your biggest holdouts.
Yep, exactly.
Who really matters.
Yeah, and I like the fact that, you know what, like if I do believe that they're leading this in Virginia, and no disrespect to other states, I know there's other things, and if you want to chat about them, go to Disrupt Education Podcast and fill out the form, and we'll see if we can get to you. We do read through those. I think. In the next few years, maybe there will be an asterisk on a teacher credential and or training program that you were trained in Virginia, and you have this certain design thinking mindset, etc. There's an opportunity for post-secondary education systems and communities to really look like at these different ways of doing things as well, because the training and they can learn from these models. And I really love the fact that there is ODU, there are colleges and universities in Virginia that are working with this. I'm excited to see what transpires with that. So this is another masterclass, and each one is just like, I've got pages of notes. We have more speakers coming up who are in this innovation, doing things differently and proving it. Throwing data out there, the research, and I feel like right now we were lucky enough to be part of the hub of Virginia and Gary and that team, but also starting to pull down these silos between states to where we can all learn from each other, not just within Virginia Commonwealth, but beyond. And I think that is going to be extremely powerful. Here we are, Alli, disrupting education.
One podcast at a time. The mighty team.
Yes, the mighty disruptors. Love that. So if you haven't heard Gary's, go back. If you listen to all this, and then sometimes I like to read the end of the book. This could be the end of the book, but then you go to the front. I rarely do that though, because I like to see the end. But this is a great series. We got great speakers coming up, a lot of amazing people that you want to connect with. Whether you're an educator in the classroom and you're frustrated and you feel like you can't do much, you can connect with these people. If you're an administrator or a leader of the education, if you're a community member, all these people that we are speaking with are leaders in change. And if you are one that is complaining about something, one or two things in school or the entire school system, you're in the right place. Start connecting with these people. We're change makers, and that's what we're here for. So, that was a lot. But for Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Disrupt Education Podcast. We'll catch you later.
Thank you for joining us on the Disrupt Education Podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, we'd appreciate it if you subscribed and shared it with someone on their own learning journey. We're also excited to announce our new career coaching services, where you can work directly with Peter and Alli to clarify your path and showcase your unique value. Visit disrupteducationpodcast.com to learn more. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep disrupting education.